But one of the roles as a chamber is advocating for small business and being the convener of leaders and influencers, bringing them together to connect different people and resources. And this Outlook series is just that. It's designed to provide insight into what's going on in the current economic and potential economic conditions. So, but first, as always is our tradition, we're going to start with the invocation and the pledge. So if you would, please stand. Bow your heads. Dear Lord, that we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to come together as a business community to share ideas about how to make our part of the world a better place. We are thankful for the continued blessings that you've given us. Blessings like the freedom to gather, blessings to be allowed to pursue our dreams and a better future for ourselves and our families and our communities, as well as the blessings of the wonderful meal that has been prepared for us. Please help us to remember that while we have our own dreams and goals here on earth, it is your business and your work that should guide us every day. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Now the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Once again, I want to thank Houston Healthcare for being our host sponsor here. You saw in the video earlier. Today, I've got the pleasure of introducing, we've got Parish Construction Group as our ongoing series sponsor for this, and Planners First is the session sponsor. So I'd like to welcome Kent Jordan from Planners and Rich Sutton from Parish.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you all for being here today. I know we all look forward to a great event today. Just want to thank the Chamber for putting this event on, the opportunity for Planners First Bank to be the sponsor. And thank you guys for all you do. You guys have made this a great community to live in and do business in, and we do truly appreciate that. Just a little bit about Planners. Next year we're going to celebrate our 130th birthday, so we're very proud of the fact we're one of the oldest banks in the state of Georgia. Not going to sit here and tell you what all we do. We're a bank. You know what we do. We give out money and we charge a fair interest rate, and in return we'll take your money and maybe pay you a fair interest rate as well. But thank you again to the Chamber for this opportunity, and we look forward to the event. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to echo Kent and say thank y'all for allowing us to sponsor this. This is such a great panel discussion. I remember last year, and what we learned from it was amazing. And at Parish, we're not near as old as Planners First. We're celebrating our 30th year this year, which we're really excited about. But as I was watching our video a second ago, I was able to take a minute and look at all the different projects that we've had the opportunity to work on in the Robbins region, and particularly for Houston County. And that's something that we take pride in, is our investment in the community and sponsoring events through the Chamber, and then building for our local businesses and municipalities is something that we're really prideful in. And just want to say thank y'all for being here today and trusting us with your business.
Okay, you come up here on your own.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Robbins Regional Chamber President, April Bragg.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. This is one of my favorite events that we do in a series that I'm thankful that that Sarah Murph encouraged me to not only bring back an economic outlook, but to expand it so that we can really look at factors impacting small business. And then of course we have a companion outlook in the fall addressing housing and how that impacts our business community here in the Robbins region. We're going to open up with two perhaps exciting, they're at least going to be colorful presentations by Dr. Greg George and Cosby Johnson. And I'm going to introduce both of them. Dr. George will come up and share our economic forecast, and then Cosby will follow him with his presentation. So just briefly to let you know who our presenters are today. Dr. Greg George is a tenured associate professor of economics and the director of the Center for Economic Analysis, which he co-founded at Middle Georgia State University in 2005. He received his PhD in economics and master's degree in resource management from the University of South Carolina and his undergraduate degree from the University of North Carolina. Dr. George is a senior fellow at the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, which advises the Georgia state government on taxes, budget, and economic issues. And he is also the chair of the Middle Georgia Economic Advisory Council, which is affiliated with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, and he has the opportunity to update them quarterly on economic conditions in the region. Cosby Johnson, Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Georgia Chamber, is actually also the mayor of the city of Brunswick. Cosby comes from a family of public servants raised by an educator and a veteran who instilled in him the importance of serving the community. A change agent himself who ran under the platform of building a better Brunswick, he strives to represent the voice of the people and is passionate about being a good steward. I've known Cosby primarily through his role with the Georgia Chamber. He is a graduate of Valdosta State University before beginning his career in government, and he now serves as Vice President of Government Affairs for the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. And Georgia government accountability, transparency, education, and economic development continue to be his top priorities. So please help me join our, let's start that over. Please join me. Yeah, I've done this once before. It's been about 7 years. So please join me in welcoming our presenters at this time. Dr. George, you're up first.
The agenda items here I'm speaking at this time, and it says walk up music. I thought it was wake up music, and it makes a lot more sense now. I just want to thank April for putting this thing together. She does a great job. She's been organizing this really for so long that since the first time I've done this, I've actually, according to my bio, been upgraded to a full professor. And I'm the Hollander Professor in Free Market Economics, an endowed position that was granted to me last year. So I'm kind of a big deal.
You are a big deal. I know.
So you're getting high quality economics from me today. So what are we going to do here? I have kind of a standard shtick that I do for you guys every year, and that I do in Macon as well. I didn't do it this year. I had some family business to attend to back in January and February, but I normally give these presentations every year. I look forward to this one, and it's always kind of the same story. I'm going to look back, see where we've been, where we're at now, where we're going. It's kind of the standard format. But the main thing is this: I'm always, being from this work, living in this region for 25 years. It's become this ongoing kind of sibling rivalry between Bibb County and Houston County, that you guys always win with the economic data. And so I get up here and I just basically spend 15 minutes telling you guys how great you are, and then I go back to Bibb County and cry in my pillow for a while. But this year, I've decided to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to be a little more critical of you guys, and we'll see how it works out. Actually, there's some really interesting and nuanced things going on in the economy this year, really for the past few months, 6 months or so, that will continue through the end of the year, and that kind of leaves wide open what's going to be going on in 2026. So I hope I can provide some insights there, and we have to look over here, just monitors.
You're working on it.
Okay, that's fine. I can wing it. A couple of disclaimers first. As April mentioned in my bio, I work with the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank, so anything that I say here today is not the opinion of the Federal Reserve Bank. It's strictly my opinion. Also, you're going to hear a lot of talk. There's been a little bit of murmuring about potential for recession this year. We've heard the first little signals that there may be some dark clouds on the horizon with the economy. It's important to note that when we talk about recessions in this country, based on the way that we designate them now, it's really a panel of economists that are looking nationally to determine whether we're in a recession or not. And that's a national conglomerate of information that's piled on, and then they figure out whether the nation is in a recession. But that doesn't mean that local economies are necessarily suffering. So you can be little island areas. So really, recessions are kind of a national phenomenon, but economic outlooks are kind of a local idea, so I want to keep those separate. What else do I have here? Oh, and just an idea, forecasting can be kind of difficult. It's difficult to predict the future. There's different ways of doing it, technical, judgmental, fundamental forecasting. With smaller geographic regions, it's hard to do fundamental forecasting, which is building these big, huge computer models and throwing in all the data, because you just don't have a lot of great data at the local level to work with. So you have to kind of rely on more gut feeling, which is your judgmental forecasting, and technical forecasting, which is looking at trends. And we're going to do a little bit of that today. I want to kind of tell you guys a story about what I think is going on. So I also like to grade my previous year's forecasting, and I was pretty proud of myself last year, but since I couldn't do the presentation in Macon, I had my dean fill in to me. It's always really not a good idea to ask your boss to do your work for you, but he gratefully filled in for me and did a great job. But I gave him my slides, and I'd given myself like an A for my forecast, grading it, and then he corrected it and put a B minus on my grade. But I think I did pretty good last year, so we'll see how I do this year. This is something most economists don't do. Most economists will never tell you what they did the previous year. That's probably pretty good. B minus probably pretty good. So, one of the big economic variables that economists like to look at to see where we're at is unemployment. And this is the start of the nuanced and interesting story that I'm seeing for Houston County, for Warner Robins right now. The unemployment rate here is always low. It's always a point or a point and a half lower than mid county, and it's usually about a point or half a point lower than the state average. So you guys typically have very low unemployment. Right now, I think it's at 3.3% for Houston County, which is a very low number. Now, here's where that sounds better than the 4.3% that's in Bibb County right now. But actually, there's criticism I can levy on that. We're having a labor shortage, and it's very difficult to hire people when you have 3.3% unemployment. So really, your unemployment rate is so good that it's kind of bad. It can cause inflationary pressures. It can cause inefficiencies just in the time it takes to hire qualified workers. There's reasons for that. We have some demographic shifts going on, and some other things in the economy. Really post-COVID, we still haven't recovered from some of the retirements and things that took place during the COVID years. So unemployment is low. That's good, but it could be a little bit too low, and we kind of want to see that actually creep up a little bit so that employers have a pool of people to hire from. That's the first part of the story I want you to keep in mind. Civilian labor force, I kind of see a slight upward trend here, which is good. We want to see the labor force growing. This is also a good demographic indication, because the civilian labor force includes people 16 to 65. A lot of places in the southeast are growing, but it's the 65 and older crowd that's growing. And nothing wrong with 65 and older people, but they're not part of the labor force. They typically are retired, and they utilize public services, but they're not kind of pitching in terms of the workload. And that's fine. We respect our seniors and all, but you need the workforce, and you need young people coming in. So the fact that you have a slight upward trend is actually rare right now for communities. So that's actually a good part of the story that I'm seeing there. It's a slight upward trend, but it's definitely, I think, an upward trend there. Along with that, people coming to this area to work, you're going to need more houses, and housing inventory has been a problem since COVID. We had a big spike back there during COVID. People kind of started working from home and wanted a bigger home, and we had a lot of housing activity, and then it really slowed down. We're noticing in Bibb County the housing market is starting to pick up, inventories are starting to pick up, and there is whispers out there that we're starting to return to normal. Part of that is people have kind of got accustomed to 7% mortgage rates, which we've been spoiled to 2.5 and 3% mortgage rates for a long time. Those are unrealistically low interest rates, but we seem to have gotten addicted to them. With the federal funds rate right now at 4 1/3, that's actually kind of normal. We're still kind of clamoring for it to come down, but I think people have started to kind of readjust their scale a little bit, and we're starting to get used to that. But a lot of things have to get worked out. Housing prices have to adjust. All markets have to adjust in general. Banks have to adjust. You heard from Kent earlier talking about lending money at a reasonable rate and borrowing. If you're retiring, bond rates at 1% are not very good. You really want these rates to be in this kind of 4 to 5% range, which we're at with CDs right now and government bonds. So we're seeing, I think, a normalization, I think, of the housing market, which has been kind of a roller coaster ride for the past 20 years. As far as interest rates go, the Fed just met and announced that they would be probably holding the course right now. I can add a few insights here. The Fed had originally planned to bring interest rates down another quarter point or so this year, maybe a half point, and that would get us right at the four range or high threes. Based on some data that just came out today, namely the inflation rate that they just released this morning, it looks like we don't have any inflationary pressures. Unemployment nationally is still at 4.2%. And since those numbers are both good, there is no reason to mess with interest rates. You mess with interest rates when inflation is too high or when unemployment is too high, and they're both low. So there's not going to be a lot of push, I think, from the Fed to lower interest rates anytime soon. That might have been kind of slowed down a little bit with this latest economic news. I know this is a fairly contentious political issue right now. We've got politicians wanting the rates to be lower because it does seem to juice the economy a little bit. But as far as my understanding of the Fed and my relationship with the Fed, I see them looking at this data and saying, yeah, there's no rush to lower interest rates. So if we do get them, they'll be later in the year, or because something breaks, we'll see. This is another part of the local story in private establishments. It seems to be leveling off now. So if we have the labor force increasing, unemployment rate low, we will see in a second population increasing in general. But the private establishments are holding steady. That has to mean that private establishments are growing. This seems like a healthy idea to me. A lot of businesses started up during COVID. People had stimulus money and other means by which to start companies. Many of those will fail, but then the resources will reconsolidate, and you'll get more growth from the successful firms. And I think we're in that kind of second stage where the market's kind of weeded out the wheat from the chaff, and now we see the healthy firms starting to grow. And I think that's the story that's going on here, which is really a sign of a healthy economy. But that takes us back to that unemployment problem. That there's so few available workers, it could create some local inflationary pressures if you can't find the workers and you're forced to hire them away from other firms. But that doesn't really solve the problem, because then another firm has to figure out where to hire somebody from. So that's kind of the story that I'm looking at. And this was one of the data graphs that I pulled up that really looked nice to me. The fact that Houston County is growing. It's just a good steady growth. That's if this continues, you guys are in really good shape. Really, the worst thing that can happen to an area is people leaving, exit from a market. Really hurts communities. But the fact that this is a growing place where people want to live, want to move, again, it's one of those things I can just come here and say, hey, you're doing great. Congratulations. So just a quick summary forecast, just to kind of wrap up the time here, before they play the wake-up music. So just today that the inflation numbers came out 2.3. The analysts were anticipating 2.4, so we beat those expectations. And again, the Fed is definitely looking at that right now and saying, hey, there's no inflationary pressures. We could lower interest rates, but there's no unemployment concerns, so why do it? And again, unemployment nationally is good. And then labor markets, we want to see them continue to bend, and I like that fact that you have that growing civilian labor force here. That does mean that the right demographic constituency is moving into the area, the right age demographic rather, is moving to the area. What else do I have there that's important? Because of the increase in population and increase in the labor force, I would expect to see home prices start to come back up again. The higher interest rates kind of put a little bit of a slowdown on housing price increases, because at a higher interest rate you can't afford as much house, so it puts a little downward pressure on the prices. But now that we're getting accustomed to those rates, I kind of feel like we might see, because of the increase in population, you may start seeing more normal growth in the housing market in terms of prices. And again, anticipate that modest decline from the Fed. And then I don't see why you shouldn't continue your stable growth here in population. Let that go. Okay. So, key takeaways. I've been saying this has been kind of my thought on 2025 and early 2026. I see 2025 as a transition year. A lot of weird things are going on this year. We kind of know what 2024 looked like, and I think 2026 is going to be very different than 2024 for a variety of reasons. And that means that 2025 is kind of this transition year where we're kind of feeling our way and trying to figure out what to do. We see it in terms of political action up in DC. We have a lot of transition going on up there, a lot of changes in how things are run in Washington DC, and that really hasn't resolved itself yet. And so that's going on. We've got huge advances in technology with AI. I've been a private beta tester for OpenAI for 5 years now, and so from the first models, GPT-2 that I started testing, they were useless, and now they're an integral part of my workflow. I mean, a lot of the stuff I do involves that. So there's going to be huge changes. That AI stuff is just it's moving rapidly, and updates come weekly, not monthly or annually. So I anticipate that's going to cause a lot of disruption and changes. I'm not a doomsdayer. I don't think it's going to kill the economies. It's not going to turn us all into a bunch of paupers with a few rich people at the top. That's not what's going to happen. It's going to be a technological advance that causes a change in how we do our jobs. And so for this interim period, we just have to kind of figure that out, how we're going to utilize this tool that we have at our disposal. But you're going to see a lot of doomsdayers, and Terminator 3 is going to happen, all that kind of stuff. We'll wait and see. And it does. Fine. No more of these to organize. No more forecasting. Anything else there? And like I said, demographics. One thing that I've been on the bandwagon about recently in a lot of the presentations that I'm doing is that I'm really concerned about demographics because we have not been making babies as fast as we used to, and we actually are kind of starting this population decline. Some of my research now indicates that it's not so much that there's been a cultural change in terms of people not wanting families and not wanting to have 2.1 children per household, even though it's down to 1.6 children per family now. And that fertility rate is too low for replacement. Populations will decline and becomes problematic. I think what I'm noticing in the work that I'm doing right now is people aren't deciding to not have kids, they're delaying it. They're pushing families back. You see, I did a project up in Alpharetta for a small elementary school, and the Parent-Teacher Association group hired me to come in and talk about why their school should not be shut down because the population was declining of students. And the PTA consisted of a bunch of 30 and 40-year-olds, late 30s, early 40-year-olds. I was expecting to see 20 and 30-year-olds with kids in elementary school, but they're professionals pushing it back. So we may see that the population is not kind of declining; it's just been kind of shifted backwards as we push the whole childbearing thing back a little bit. So if that's the case, we may just have a temporary little dip here. But like I said, Warner Robins and Houston County is in great shape because you've got immigration, and any kind of things that you do to promote that are always good. We're doing that in Bibb County. We need people. So any kind of policy and stuff like that you can do going forward is a good thing. And I think that's probably all I got for you. And I'll turn it over now to Kelsey.
Good afternoon. My name is Cosby Johnson, and I am a part of the delayed family group that we just spoke about. So I will get on that. 1.6. I see we need to bump it up, Doc. I want to give a big thank you to President Bragg, staff, everyone who has helped out, but especially Chairman Lester. Thank you for not pulling this mic up all the way to where you needed it, leaving it down here for the short runs. So I appreciate that. really what we want to talk about right now is a projection 25 years into the future. And I'm so happy that the doc came up and gave us some real numbers about where we are currently, because I get up here and pontificate about where we may be 25 years from now. But the reason that is beyond important is because we just celebrated the Chamber celebrating over 115 years being in existence over in Macon. And when they first started, a bunch of guys kind of got together and decided to start traveling the state, started connecting businesses so they could start to build out what the economy of this great state would look like. And over that time, over those hundreds of years, communities like yourself, communities like little ones where I'm from in Brunswick, but communities that are large economic drivers like Savannah and Atlanta have also poured into that ideal to really continue to make Georgia, I think it's 11 years running, the #1 state to do business. And I don't know what we're paying that magazine, but it's a good subscription price. I hope we keep it up. So as we talk about that, we want to talk about kind of where we're going in the future. I'll do here, turn around this way. The first thing we want to kind of have a conversation about is population growth. And population numbers that you see here really quantify where Georgia is going. And the first question you ask yourself is, if Doc was talking about what he was talking about, where we were declining in that population that we're having in those families, where are those numbers coming from? And those numbers are coming because people are choosing to call Georgia home. People are coming from every different state, coming from every different country, choosing to expand their businesses here in Georgia. And because of that expansion, Georgia must become more nimble, must become more thoughtful, and must become really more dynamic with the way we engage this population, not only in our workforce, but also in our entrepreneurial growth, but also in our education space. So these are all things that we have to think about when we're building out and thinking about this population growth over the next 25 years. But the second part that's really interesting about that is initially when we thought about people moving into the state of Georgia, you could probably count with 2 or 3 fingers where they may be moving, right? You think they're moving to Atlanta, maybe a little bit north of Atlanta, or maybe Savannah. If you're lucky, maybe you're moving down there by me with St. Simon's Island, but usually you're retired, and as Doc said, they're not pitching in, right? So I think it's important when we think about this, not only for those communities inside of 285 or contiguous to 285, but it's really important for the Warner Robins of the world. It's important for the Brunswicks of the world. It's important for the Lowndes counties of the world to really start thinking, because these people aren't coming in and just calling Atlanta home. If you look down where Hyundai decided to plant their roots, I can tell you when I talk to those local officials, they aren't asking questions necessarily about job creation. They aren't asking questions necessarily about how to attract more business. They are asking infrastructure questions. How do we get more roads coming from this place to that place? This 2-lane road used to work, and now you got 400 people going to work every day, and that 2-lane road is backed up for 2.5 miles. The other thing that they're saying is we can't build a school fast enough. We had this student population X, and now over 2 or 3 years, that student population has ballooned. So how do we ensure that we're ready for those things? The reason I say that to you here today is because the numbers that you see on this graph won't just happen in Atlanta. It is not a Andre Dickens problem. It is not a Governor Kemp problem. It is truly a problem for each and every community around the state. This one's really interesting to me because it talks a little bit about what Doc was talking about. When you see really the age and the generational disparity that you see those other generations starting to grow and starting to get into the workforce. For those of you who are running your own businesses, I'm sure you are starting to hire some of those Gen Zs, Gen Alphas. They're the weird ones. They're not like us, right? They're the ones who have been through so much. But when you think about it, a lot of their life has been very different than the life that we've lived. They lived through a pandemic. They understand what it is to not go to work 9 to 5. But the other thing I want to tap in really quickly here is the portability of their job is important. They aren't going to be someone who says, I get locked in with Parish Construction and I'm there for 40 years. The new model is these kids are in and out within 3 to 5 years and transitioning to another job, even if it's within the same career field. So this is important to deeply understand, because as you all are bringing in new employees, it's important to understand their mindsets, how they move, and how they think. The other one that is important to us is job creation here in Georgia, really to match up with that population growth. Our job creation numbers have been something that we have been outstandingly supportive of and thoughtful of. But the thing that we want to really point out is that this growth is going to come in sectors that we have never seen before. I really liked it when the president of the bank came up here and he said, listen, we're going to take your money and give you a good interest rate, maybe hold your money and give you a good interest rate. I do think that should be your commercial for the next time you come out, just for the record. But what that does show is there are some traditional economic models that we've understood for a long time. Banking is one of them. Agriculture is one of them. Manufacturing is one of them. But I think as we start to look at what's changing in the landscape, there are some new job models that are coming online that we need to prepare for as business owners, but we also need to prepare for as parents and school systems to prepare the talent for the next things that we'll see coming down the road. Now this is where we start to get to the fun stuff, because all of you all run businesses and you would like to see us spend additional dollars. But the one thing that is important to us here is that over this time, while we will see $140 billion of additional spending during that 25-year growth, the question is, where are those dollars going? Who are those dollars going to, and what communities are those dollars being spent in? And so how do we ensure that local communities, both small and large, realize how to expand in the economic markets that are coming? And the economic markets that are coming is AI, is R&D, is venture capital. And those are the things that we are going to have to find ways to not only plug our next generations into, but also find ways to get our regulatory markets more up to date on, but also to get our local legislators and our local groups more up to date on, to figure out how to grow that market to be a part of this $160 billion or $140 billion of growth. Now, the one thing I will say is that we've learned to spend money different ways. I think initially, if you all remember pre-COVID, everybody in here remembers what it was like before COVID. And before COVID, you wanted something from the grocery store, you get in your car, you start your car up, then you go to the grocery store and you buy it. Now, you get on your phone and you tell someone else to go pick that up for you. Now, one would say that's a great change, but that is a major shift in the economy. And that major shift in the economy happened rapidly. And so for us, when we see $160 billion of additional funding coming into Georgia, additional spending coming into Georgia, it's not just about what they spend it on, it's about how they are going to spend it. How quickly are they going to use that app? How quickly are they going to go to the local shop? How quickly are you going to be able to build out your downtowns? How quickly are you going to be able to uplift your artisanal workers? And how quickly are you going to be able to say, we want parts of certain sectors that make sense for our community? So this $160 billion growth statewide is not just a moment for us to say, yes, that is amazing. It's a moment for us to say, how do we tap in? How do we get ready? And how do we get ready for how people are going to spend those dollars? And in spending those dollars, I want to talk about one of the major ways people spend those dollars, which is on power. Now, the one thing that we see is our power growth and power generation here in Georgia has been growing exponentially. But I want to give a shout out. I don't know if Georgia Power is in the room, but Georgia Power has been generational in their thought about how to ensure that we have enough power for the future. Plant Vogels 1 through 4 was really work thought out generations ahead of its time to ensure that we don't have blackouts, that we don't have brownouts. I don't know what other colors are out there, but whatever other colors, Georgia Power is ensuring that we don't have it. But that came through generational investment over time. But when you see a 57% hike in our use of power, we got to start asking ourselves some different questions. And the different questions we have to ask ourselves is, A, what is the amount of money that us as individuals, but also us as communities and large business owners have to pay into the grid to ensure that that grid stays stable? A lot of what we've been working on at the Capitol is to ensure that we are putting the right kinds of dollars to protect our grids, but also that we're expanding those other powerways in a smart way. We had a bill this year come up, and that bill was community solar. And that sounds amazing on its face. And I'm sorry for anybody in the room that's for community solar. You can beat me up in the corner later. But I will say this, community solar as presented allow people to tap into a solar network but not pay those dollars into the grid that you and I are paying in to protect and to strengthen every single day. Why was that important not only to Georgia Power, that was important to the business community and all those in the state of Georgia, because anybody tapping into our power grid, we got to make sure if there's 57% growth, every single dollar that we can get to pour into that grid to strengthen it for the next generation will be needed. And those dollars will be needed not to just support it for your home growth, because as we expand homes and as we expand communities, when I initially moved to Atlanta, I'm from small town Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia, so when I initially moved to Atlanta, I chose to move to Woodstock. I don't know how many of you know where Woodstock is, but I decided to move to Woodstock because that was the closest thing that I could find to Atlanta that looked like Brunswick, right? And I got up there and it was a little 2-lane road, nice little downtown. I could get to the grocery store within 2-3 minutes, everything was good. If I go to Woodstock right now, that same community, 10 years later, I can barely move through Woodstock. That's how many people have decided to call Woodstock home. And because of that growth, it's important for us to continue to realize that not only will that growth happen in the home community, but that growth will also happen in our business community. Me and James were just talking about a piece of land in Brunswick, and he said, man, you should just open it up to data center. You'd be the new hottest thing. And the thing that was funny about that is data centers are really what's on the forefront of a lot of people's mind when we talk about energy usage. Their usage of water, their usage of electricity. So when we talk about expanding our grid, we're talking about expanding our grid for the long term for several other industries. This is a big one. I want to talk about really quick, 25 years ahead for transportation. Last time we worked on transportation in a major way on a state level was House Bill 170. I don't know how many of you are around for that, but it was very hard work to the last day. Just so you know, when you go to a hotel, you see that $5 fee on that hotel. That is because of House Bill 170, right? And those $5 go to ensure that our roads and our bridges and our infrastructure are ready for the next generation. But to be very honest, we have a lot more work to do. And inside of the governor's budget, we were happy to see hundreds of millions of dollars be put into infrastructure to get us ready for the next generation. Our real GDP growth is something that we have been working on at the Chamber for a long time. And really, what you see over time is an acceleration of our industries and where that growth lasts. Agriculture, obviously, is our main industry and continues to be a main industry here in Georgia. But many industries continue to change. We've seen ourselves have to change to major manufacturing with Governor Deal brought in Caterpillar, but also as Hyundai continues to grow, as Kia continues to grow, we become a manufacturing hub. But the one thing that we do have to get ready for, and the one thing that I will say I am not ready for at all, is the new innovation economy that is coming. What are we going to do with AI? And what are we going to do with high-tech research and development? And how do we find a space for Georgia to continuously be in those spaces? We're happy that Google has decided to call us home. We're happy that Microsoft calls us home. We're happy that a lot of people are doing that work here in Georgia, but we have to find a way to continue to work it. These are the 5 pillars of really where Chris and our leadership see us going for Vision 2050, and we want to just put these before the state because they are what we will be working on over the next 25 years, whether it's Nancy, who's my boss, and our team down at the Capitol, our comms team, or our team that reaches out to local communities. These are the 5 pillars that they will be focused on continuously. The major one, we're happy to be sitting in a healthcare facility right now. I hear that we are going to be Emory of the South soon. So this slide really is to say we have to find new ways to ensure that people are easily being piped into healthcare jobs. The scariest number on this slide is the amount of job openings you see. I just want to stop for a moment. The rest of it is just bright colors. I hope we're not inciting epilepsy with these colors. I don't have anything to do with it. But the one thing that's important is when you see that many job openings, and we hear Doc talking about how many people are growing in that generation of over 65, those 2 numbers are upside down. And so we have to work with colleges, we have to work with TCSG and USG institutions to ensure we're getting nurses, doctors, and all of those who work in those affiliated organizations into those jobs as quickly as possible to ensure that we're taking care of our generation. Really quickly, career opportunities for the next generation is something that we're going to be focused on. Senator Walker worked on a major piece of legislation that had to do with licensures. And the reason licensing is important is because for us, when you bust your behind, it's time to get to work. We want you to get the job and we want you to get out there and get to it. But oftentimes in Georgia, there are a lot of hurdles to people jumping into those jobs. We want to make sure we do the work to get rid of those hurdles so people can get to work swiftly. I think this one speaks for itself. I don't know how many of you work. There's a high demand career list. President Bragg knows about it. She's on our hub commission. She's helped us lobby to strengthen the high demand career initiative list. This is how that list is going to change in 25 years. And you all see where we are now, and you can definitely tell the new industries that are coming. So for us, it is important that you all go home, not only get your kids focused in these industries, but also it's going to be a piece of retooling for my generation and other generations to get ready for what's coming. I'm speeding through this. I think I'm doing great. I'll skip that one. This is one that's really important to me. For any of you all in the education sector, you all can see the direct correlation between education, unemployment, right? We got to get kids swiftly. If they're making a decision that college isn't for them, we're going to have to find the pipeline that's ready for them. We can't just let them scoot off to the side, because them not attaining some credential, them not attaining some education post-high school puts them on a pathway to not earn as much money, not be able to pour in their family the way they need to. And we want them to ensure that they're on that path. I don't know why they put this one in here. This is hilarious. I just think they want us to know that we're all old. But this is what the new gen that's coming. Okay, and when I talked earlier about knowing that generation, it's important for you all to be able to know what they're connected to, because you all are going to have to be attracting these people to work in your jobs. When we were young, these were the skills that we needed. But as you see in 2050, there's a lot of other skills that they need to bring into their bailiwick. And so for us, we're continuing in a number of different ways, whether it's leadership, institutions, whether it's pouring them into post-secondary education, whether it's pouring them into post-secondary credentialing. We know that the next generation of leaders, the next generation of students, your children and your workers, they're going to have a ton of skills that just in the beginning we didn't have to have. And so those interpersonal skills, those ethical judgment skills, those abilities to be able to run a business on a nice edge with a constantly changing area, this is going to be important to knock that out. And so with that, I'll do my plug, because my CEO won't let me come home if I don't. Georgia's Coolest Things. We're getting this off the ground because you all are creating amazing things here in Warner Robins and across the state. If you know a business that's creating Georgia's Coolest Thing, if you know a business that needs to be highlighted, we're going to ask you to take that in, scan that, and then let us know. We're going to put them into a statewide competition. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. And the other one is, all of these numbers come from our department, Daniela Perry, who's working really hard to gin these numbers up. And so if you all have any questions for our foundation, if you all want our Georgia Red Book where these numbers come from, you all scan this QR code, it'll pop up. But even if you wanted a physical copy, you all let President Bragg know or myself, and we'll get to it. So thank you so much.
Was not very presidential entrance there. But as you've heard, we have a great recap on where we are as a state and where we're going and what those projections look like. But with any good plan, we got to figure out how to get there, right? And not only that, but how does this impact you in your daily life and small business? And so at this time, I'm going to ask our panel to go ahead and start making their way forward. Cosby and Dr. George will be joined by Jonathan Martin with Constantia Brooks Smith and Profit, along with James Bill with the Georgians for Lawsuit Reform, moderated by our past chair and parish construction CFO, Ms. Sarah Murph. Y'all give them a round of applause.
I always look forward to this, and I've joked about it being a fireside chat, but this really does feel like a living room. So, I'm glad you're all here today. When April and I originally thought this up, we wanted to create an event for small and mid-sized businesses to come one time and hear about a wide range of topics. We've already done that with the 2 presentations so far, but I'm excited to dig in a little bit deeper with this crowd. And so I want to point out one other thing. We are proud to be a part of the Georgia Hub Chamber Council, and we do have a sheet on your table, so check that out. And we also have it on the screen here, it's not in front of me, but these are communities across the state like ours that get together and advocate for us. It's not just Atlanta and everywhere else, but this gives us a voice at the Georgia Chamber, and we're proud to be a part of that organization. Let's go ahead and get this started with a big topic, and that is tort reform and why it's been front and center this legislative session. I might have mentioned this at one of our prior meetings, but I think Cosby, you joked about our #1 state for business for 11 years running. We're also the #1 legal hellhole, right? For 2 years running.
2 years running.
And so that contradiction between the two, I think, has really led to a lot of this tort reform discussion and made it, obviously, Governor Kemp's top priority. So I'll start with James. James, could you tell us what is tort reform and why is it so important that the legislature get it done, particularly this session?
Sarah, thank you. And April, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. And Sarah, thank you for moderating the panel. James Beal with Georgians for Lawsuit Reform. Tort reform, huge topic at the Capitol this year. It's been a major topic over the last few years, but very thankful that the governor took it on as his top priority. So what is tort reform? Because tort reform can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, especially in the lawyer world. It can mean different things, but for businesses, it is about reducing, the exposure that you all have to frivolous claims, frivolous lawsuits, and things like that. And there's a lot of gamesmanship that can go on in the civil justice system that cuts against business. That makes you feel like I need to just pay this claim out and move on because it's more expensive to defend. We heard that over and over and over again from businesses. And so what that translated to in this year was 2 bills, Senate Bill 68 and Senate Bill 69. And Senate Bill 68, we call it the omnibus bill. It made a lot of, and if you guys have like 4 hours, I can go through it, but it made some procedural changes of how you bring a case and how you can argue your case. It also made sure that we only allow relevant evidence and allow more relevant evidence into lawsuits. One particular part of that bill I think that would be interesting to business owners, landowners, and others is the premises liability related portions of it. There's a specific type of claim called negligent security. And basically, if someone is harmed on your property by outside criminal activity, what we were seeing in Georgia is we were seeing more and more landowners, more and more business owners getting hit with those claims and getting hit with those lawsuits, even though they would have nothing to do with what was going on. For instance, 2 guys doing the deal of some kind, maybe an iPad or something like that, in your parking lot. You don't know about it, you don't know it going on at all. Something breaks down between them, they get into a fight, someone's injured. Well, you as the property owner could get sued for that. And it was becoming more and more expensive for properties to stay open, and we don't want to look like San Francisco with CVS's and their grocery stores locked down. We didn't want to get to that point. So this bill was really to try and get in front of that. And then Senate Bill 69 was the other piece of this puzzle. And this regulated third-party litigation funding. It's this growing industry out there. And it also prohibits foreign funding into our litigation space because that just incentivizes gamesmanship and things like that. The court, I say Senate Bill 69 is keep communism out of the courts. That's the quick way of putting it. It hasn't caught on yet. But quick 33-minute maybe? I don't know. That was a kind of explainer real quick.
Well, so with the latest tort reform legislation, how does it specifically impact our small businesses in Georgia? And are there specific areas where maybe something was left on the table that they still need to remain vigilant about?
Yeah, well, I had mentioned the premises liability portion. So how the system kind of works, or how the broad system kind of works is you hear about these deep pocket companies, industries getting tagged with these lawsuits. they'll lose a lawsuit in the litigation, they'll get hit with a $40 million judgment or something like that. And you're like, well, small business owner, thank God that's not me. You know, thank God I'm not this national industry, this target. But what it was doing is it was creating an atmosphere of you know, if you get a claim against you, hey, I'm an attorney, I've got a $40 million verdict against this big guy. What if I came after you? If you don't settle this claim, if you try to defend yourself against this claim, then you could be hit with a $40 million verdict. And so that's where the small business aspect of all this really came in, is because we are trying to, and hopefully successfully with these two bills, push back against that growing atmosphere. And you asked if something's left on the table. Well, you know, to my organization, yeah, there's plenty of work still left to be done. I think that there are opportunities available, such as we have a business court, statewide business court, that's dedicated to handling claims between two businesses, lawsuits between two businesses. Those type of lawsuits can kind of gum up your judicial system in a lot of areas, especially in major cities. And I think that there are some improvements we could do to that were not touched by Senate Bill 68 or Senate Bill 69 this year.
Thank you. Jonathan, could you elaborate on how tort reform intersects with broader regulatory updates and what this means for operational risk management in small businesses?
Well, you know, it takes us right back to high school civics. No matter what they do here at the state legislature, I'm a management side labor and employment lawyer, and virtually everything I do is in federal court. So, you know, one of the reasons that Georgia is consistently one of the best places to do business is I think because our General Assembly has seen that interfering in the employer-employee relationship doesn't do any good, right? We already have a whole host of federal laws that already govern those relationships. So even if we have tort reform at the state level, small businesses still need to be aware of all of their obligations under federal law. I hear this all the time, right? We don't worry about labor and employment law. Georgia's a right to work state. Well, of course it is. However, usually when people throw that term around, yeah, it's a little bit of a misnomer. The doctrine of right to work is whether or not you have to join a labor union. Usually when people throw that around, they're talking about the doctrine of employment at will. And the doctrine of employment at will is pretty simple. It holds that unless you have a written employment contract with a specified term, there's not a cause of action for wrongful termination in the state of Georgia, right? An employer is free to terminate the employee for any reason at all. And in fact, I would argue that it's stronger in Georgia than anywhere else because it's part of our Georgia code. So our judiciary can't modify it even if they wanted to. Having said that, there's a whole blanket of federal legislation that governs the employer-employee relationship, and the threshold is fairly small. The grandmother of them all is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right? There was a time in America that not everybody had the same opportunities because of the color of their skin, because of where their family came from, because of how they worship, because of their gender. And so Congress said we're going to do something about that. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act kicks in when you have 15 employees. USERRA, the Uniform Service Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, that doesn't have a minimum number of employees. The Fair Labor Standards Act, that has a dollar threshold. Interstate commerce, which by the way, everything's interstate commerce, and $500,000 in annual revenues. So even if we wind up having tort reform in the state of Georgia to protect us from litigation based on what happens in your parking lot, right? There's still a whole cottage industry out there where people are leveraging federal law to try to extort, and let's call it what it is, extort settlements. I give every one of my clients 3 answers. I give them the law professor's answer. Here's the statute. Here's how things are going to work out. I'll give them the practical business answer, right? University of Georgia gave me a finance degree if I promised never to use it. And so, I'll tell them, hey, here's what I would do with my money. A lot of times what I will say is, it's more expensive to defend this claim than it is to settle this claim, right? And, unfortunately, that's just sort of the economy we live and work in. Notwithstanding tort reform, there's still going to be a lot of one call, that's all. And unfortunately, that winds up costing businesses money if they don't. And folks, business owners, here's your Achilles heel. It's your first line supervisors. Because most of you promote like this, right? Bubba, you're a good guy, you've got a great technical skill set, you seem to have a little common sense, You seem to get along well with others. So we'll make you a supervisor, hint, hint, an agent of the corporation. So don't screw it up. And then we're surprised when they do. So you've got to make sure that you train your first level supervisors on the common mistakes they can make that can create a lot of liability for your company.
Thank you. James, what happens next in tort reform?
Well, it could go a lot of different ways. We had a very successful year this year, and some of those procedural changes that we made, for instance, you can introduce evidence of seatbelt non-use, which, you probably thought, well, heck, if somebody's not using their seatbelt in a car accident, maybe the jury should see that. No, not until this bill passed was that allowed. Things like that, we're pretty confident that those will remain in place through the judicial process. However, there were some changes also made in that bill that we think will likely be challenged in court, either from a constitutional perspective or perhaps in the course of different cases moving through. We've already heard of a couple trials where the question of some of the provisions of Senate Bill 68 came up, and a judge, did not allow for the changes to occur in the course of that trial. So we're going to monitor this in the judicial space for the near future. But then again, next year, the legislature comes back just like it does every January, and they'll have an opportunity to change the law. So they could make it better, they could make it worse, or they could, leave it alone. Thankfully, we have a governor, Governor Kemp is staying in office for another year, and because this is his top priority, the Senate Bill 68, Senate Bill 69 were his top priorities, I think we're fairly safe this coming year. That's just sort of my analysis of it. But, we have a legislature, we got 91 votes in the House for these bills, for Senate Bill 68, and that is the bare minimum that you can get to pass the bill. And there was bipartisan opposition, bipartisan support for it, and so that's a tough road right there moving forward. It just goes to show that many members of the legislature are not in favor of these sort of changes, and it's unlikely that all of those people will just go away. But a lot of them will simply be reelected, and that's up to the will of the people. And moving forward, I will say this, that when I jumped into the private sector here, I previously worked for one of y'all's senators in Houston County, Senator John Kennedy, who, and I got to plug him and Representative Burchett, they carried Senate Bill 68, Senate Bill 69. But when I jumped into this side of the equation, I spoke to a lot of groups, a lot of chamber groups, the Hub Council, spoke to the bankers, which was an excellent opportunity up in Atlanta. And I would hear a lot of these different stories about people from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a year ago, getting hit with all of these frivolous claims. But then they would get hit with that, and then there would be no follow up. Their lawyer would help them navigate that. Sometimes the plaintiff wouldn't show up to court, which goes to show just how frivolous it was. But then they would not think of, well, how do I fix this problem moving forward? And so when I was speaking with these groups throughout session, trying to drum up support for these bills, I would hear that a lot. And I can't emphasize enough, call your legislator and ask them how they voted on it, because this area, Middle Georgia area, this region, it was a mixed bag. Your legislators, it was a mixed bag of who voted for and against. And if you care about this, ask them why they voted the way they did. Even if they voted yes, even if they voted no, just let them know that you're interested and engaged on this issue. So what's next? I don't know exactly. I can tell you that we're interested in making some additional improvements to the civil justice system. But I think what's next for small businesses is, grab a coffee or something with your legislator and ask them how they voted on it.
You kind of took what my transition.
I set you up.
I guess you set me up. I was gonna toss it over to Cosby and ask you, as business owners, what should we do, or what do you recommend we do as we consider the tort reform and the legislative session that's coming up, and then anything that we didn't address from the Georgia Chamber's perspective?
Yeah, no, James has worked hand in hand with my boss, Nancy Palmer, our CEO, Chris Clark. He won't pat himself on the back, so I'll do it for him. Tort reform is an immensely hard piece of legislation to get done. It does not happen easily. It didn't happen easy in Florida. It didn't happen easy here. But even with gubernatorial support, it takes the hard work of organizations that James runs. It takes the hard work of Nancy and others who really, for 40 days and 40 nights, did a lot of dinners and knocked on a lot of doors and took a lot of people out. And that was great for down at the Capitol. But I know President Bragg knows we were on a ton of calls. She hates when I say President Bragg. I don't know what she's doing. But we were on a ton of calls, and she was always on it, always pushing the message, because they're used to hearing from James, they're used to hearing from Nancy, they're used to hearing from me. But when you guys call them, they have to listen. And so, April, we just want to say thank you for your work, for this chamber's work, because without the region, without the hubs, without you all doing a thing, like, no way we get this done down in the county.
Speaking to the Georgia 2050 outlook that you just presented, how does it impact current policymaking, and what regulatory changes should small business owners anticipate based on the lobbying that you're doing for that initiative?
Yeah, a lot of the work that we're going to be doing is around workforce and talent investment. So it's going to be making sure that your young people from your community have a clear way to get into the careers that you all have before you. The interesting thing for us, and that we try and outline, is that when I was coming up, say 15 or 16, it was very easy for my dad to say, you know, I don't know about anybody else, it was old school. It was like, you're going to go college prep or VOTech. And vocational tech was, if you're going to TCSG institution, you knew where you were going. But now, those things have really become mixed. There are people who have 4 years degrees that are doing HVAC because they realize, hey, I got a finance degree, I know how to build a business, and now I got a skill and I can grow that thing. And so for us, I think Vision 2050 for us, and we're trying to get everybody to understand, instead of those things being so separate and separated from one another, let's bring those things together and make sure that those talent pipelines flow into the jobs that are here, but also flowing into the jobs of tomorrow to make sure small businesses really have the growth here locally that you all need to hire your needs.
Yeah, and these are complex topics, but to make them tangible for us, one of the things that we've heard a lot of discussion about is insurance rates. Practically speaking, can business owners expect an impact in insurance rates based on the tort reform that's already been put in place, or would that be more work in future legislative sessions?
Yeah, that's a great question. That question came up quite a bit, and arguments against tort reform, largely centered, well, there were a few of them, but one of them largely centered on, this won't impact insurance rates, and so on and so forth. What we were seeing, though, is that the path that we were on was not sustainable from a business perspective. Insurance is something people want. Insurance allows people to take risks, allows businesses to take risks. It also is a backstop for unexpected things to happen. But what we were seeing was a market or a provider, what would you call them?
Carrier.
Carrier, yeah, thank you. Carriers were leaving the state, they were cutting back on the policies that they were writing, or the policies had, 200 pages of exclusions. And so that was unsustainable. And there were a lot of, especially in the trucking space, that world was being affected a great deal, and that has a trickle-down effect into logistics and things like that, and the economy and moving freight. And so the goal here was to say, hey, let's do a bit of a reset in our civil justice space, because the classic fight at the state capitol has been the trial lawyers versus insurance/larger businesses. And in the middle of all that, small businesses would get caught up, and that has been the long time fight with tort reform. But now it was affecting every community in Georgia. It was hitting everyone. Needless to say, the goal here was to create a new sort of environment here to show, hey, look, the legislature responded for the issues that we've seen in the civil justice space. Insurance carriers, please come back. We only have one or two companies writing policy, that creates its own set of problems. So we want to build out the competition in that space. In terms of rates themselves, I'm an attorney, I'm not an insurance person per se, but I will say that The hope is that we will see similar results in Florida, which is where, after tort reform passed, they've seen reductions in some of their auto insurance rates. I was told the other day that a couple carriers are filing for reductions in rates for auto policies. We hope to see some of those results here, but it won't be overnight. These things take time. Some of the bases for lawsuits, the facts for lawsuits, they happened before the law got changed, so the old law will apply in a lot of those cases. It's just going to have to work itself out over a couple of years. Hopefully in the near term, we see a growth in our insurance market, though, and carriers coming to the state.
Before we leave this topic, Dr. George, do you have any comments on tort reform or its economic impact in Georgia?
I would just add real quickly.
You're on.
I'd add real quickly, as a testifying expert, I rely on frivolous lawsuits to make a living, so don't do your
I'm out, I'm done.
That being said, I literally have done cases where a frivolous lawsuit, hundreds of millions of dollars are being sought, and whether on the defense or the plaintiff's side, most of them do in fact settle. 99% of the cases I work on all settle before trial. And it's just like Jonathan said, that's just a game. And it's very inefficient from an economics perspective. It does impact insurance rates. It's an actuarial nightmare for a lot of firms to have to deal with. So we do need to, for economic reasons, move forward with this.
Before we leave the Gold Dome, Cosby, our own Senator Larry Walker championed significant occupational licensure measures under the Gold Dome this session. Can you share why this was so important and how this legislation will impact Georgia's business climate?
Yeah, really quickly, House Bill 579 carried it for us in the Senate. Always great to have the senator on pieces of legislation. I've worked with him on about 5 or 6 pieces. This one was really important because I don't know about any of you guys, but if you work through Secretary of State and you're trying to get licensed for something, that oftentimes is a very slow process, and you're ready to get to work. You've done your credentialing, you've done your study hours, you've done everything you can to go to work, and there seems to be some holdup, whether the board only meets once a quarter, the board only meets twice a year, you don't even know if the board meets. So those are the kinds of things that really hold up an individual being able to get to work. And what this bill says is that the Secretary of State's office can provide those provisional licenses for people to go ahead and get to work. And for us, that's been a part of a holistic movement that we've been a part of for about 4 or 5 years to deal with the portability of people moving around and keeping their licenses. April will remember House Bill 81 last year by Representative Ballard had to do with licensure reciprocity for military spouses. Right here in you all's community, there were spouses who, I'm moving here and I'm a teacher, I'm moving here and I'm an esthetician, I'm moving here and I'm a masseuse, and I'm ready to get to work. I have training and my certification from another state, but Georgia says you gotta wait a year. Well, a mother or a father waiting a year to pour income into their family is just absolutely untenable. So we had to do some work on that. We were happy to have House Bill 81 get passed. So House Bill 579 is a continual work, again, to make sure you all have people to hire each and every day.
We appreciate it. It is quite painful. I'm going to zoom out a little now and talk about navigating federal policies and shifts. And I'm going to start with you, Dr. George. Since January 20th, we have had many issues causing uncertainty, from tariffs and immigration to, particularly here in the military community, all the discussions about DOGE. And those have all gotten a lot of attention, but they impact us as business owners. And uncertainty obviously impacts us in our ability to make decisions. Can you elaborate on the likely or potential impacts on a community like ours, where the base is the economic engine of our region? And also, if anyone else would like to weigh in, feel free to do so.
Yeah, this is a big thing for Houston County because of the base. Obviously, part of DOGE was trying to scale back some of government waste, but also it was trying to scale back just the size of the government in general. So I'm not really sure how this has played out in Warner Robins at the base, but there was early retirement offers and things like that. And my first take on that was twofold. One, it might actually help if people were retiring early from their civilian jobs at the base to free up some labor to move into other sectors here that need to hire those people. So there's things like that that are very nuanced and critical in areas like this to pay attention to. Like I said, I don't know how many people are actually taking up government on those early retirement offers, but those are things to pay attention to over the next couple of years to see if that does have an impact on the labor markets. Like I said, this is a transition year from 2024 to 2026. We're going to see two different Americas, and part of that has to do with a lot of policy that's being pushed through right now. And we have seen the uncertainty with the tariff policy, but it's no big secret in economics that tariffs are not the best policy in general. They tend to be a very inefficient way of getting things done. That being said, they can be used as a negotiating tool, which is exactly what the president is using them for. And you can see with the reaction in the market. The market is the collective wisdom of everybody who kind of understands this stuff. And when huge trade wars are starting to be a threat, the market crashes. And the second that they back off of those trade threats, then the market increased like it did the last couple of days with the China reducing the China tariffs. So that's part of this kind of transition year that we're just going to have to pay attention to and see how that pans out next year.
Anyone else like to weigh in?
I think for us, I know we have just sent a letter to our congressional delegation on tariffs. The main thing that we're going to focus on is that you guys can't do business if you don't have stability. And stability in the market is what matters most. And we may be going through a transition time, but the quicker we find stability and people can fully understand what their full freight will be, it will help them. And we've seen this in our work really with the movie industry. We have a large movie industry here in Georgia that has been grown by tax credit that Georgia decided to do a while ago. When Georgia decided to kind of start tweaking that tax credit, those major industry partners kind of said, hey, you guys are going to kind of have to let us know where you land, because we are currently building a studio. And so for us, tariffs are the same way. We got to find a way to present stability to our business partners, to our members, to ensure that they know we're working each and every day to try and gain that stability and understanding for them in the market.
Then to take this back to you, Dr. George. And I also want to just celebrate how great were those slides about Houston County and how we beat Bibb County all the time. So we'll just start there. But based on Georgia's broader economic outlook and some of the information that Cosby showed us, relative to Warner Robins and our projections, what are the most critical economic trends that small business owners should prepare for over the next 12 months, but even a broader perspective like Cosby said?
Yeah, so the two things, again, that I keep going back to are the demographic shifts. The thing that's, say, impacting us in higher education is the fact that since 2008, we've been below replacement rate in terms of childbirth. And since it was 2008, right now we're starting to see those children that were never born matriculating and causing problems in K through 12, and it's starting to enter higher education. So we're just going to have to ride that storm out. But then that also means small business owners don't have the labor force that they need. So that's a big thing that I've been working with Georgia Public Policy Foundation and talking with a few lobbyists and working on a few efforts on tax reform and stuff like that with the state capitol. I've been pushing the idea that our tax policy needs to be geared in a way that encourages small businesses to retain Georgia graduates, whether through some kind of student debt relief type programs, things like that, or encourage young families from other states to immigrate into Georgia. That's going to be the fix to the problem. So as we go forward, and this is exactly what Cosby was talking about, over 2050, we're lucky that Georgia is an attractive place, and a lot of people will be moving in here. But we really need to double down on that, because it's going to be critical for every state to do that. And as other states start catching on, they're going to be competing for those families. And we want the young people coming in with their children to populate our schools. Because we've got a school system that's about 20% overbuilt right now, because we just don't have the students to build them. And that's a huge inefficiency going forward.
To all the panelists, how do you see the current economic environment impacting small business, specifically in Houston County, maybe compared to other regions in Georgia?
I mean, I'll start with going back to what Cosby had to say. The biggest thing that I'm seeing as a labor and employment lawyer is a lack of stability at the federal level. What I'm seeing with federal agencies, it's much like with tariffs. You know, it used to be, and I've been doing this for 31 years now, it used to be that when an administration changed, the leaders of these government agencies like the U.S. Department of Labor, the National Labor Relations Board, the EEOC, and the like, the leadership changed and the policy might go a little more pro-business under one administration and a little bit more, you know, pro-labor, pro-employee under the next administration, but it was always slightly left and right of center. What I've been seeing through the last probably decade or so is the shifts have been so dramatic one way or the other that it's hard to run a business if you don't know what the rules are. And I anticipate that when, for example, the National Labor Relations Board, when the Trump board is seated, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the NLRB, it is probably the most powerful, least understood of all federal labor and employment organizations. It's 5 people who have staggered terms that enforce the National Labor Relations Act. And for those of y'all who are thinking, yeah, but we're non-union, we don't worry about that. Turns out that with the exception of those of you who are in public service, Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act applies to all private employers in the United States, whether you're unionized or not. And so, you know, we saw the Biden administration not go very far left and pro-labor. And then we saw the first Trump board go completely in the opposite direction. And then we saw the Biden board go completely in the opposite direction. And I anticipate it will happen again. But the problem is, if you are creating, go back to Dr. George's point and to Cosby's point, if you're trying to project what are we going to do in a year, 2, 5, 10, 25, the answer will be, at least from a labor perspective, and dealing with some of these government agencies, I don't know what the answer is, because it is likely to change in 4 years, and everything that you create today will be completely irrelevant, which is very difficult when it comes to where do you invest your limited shareholder dollars. And on top of that, you know, your employees are your single greatest liability or your single greatest asset. And how do you lead folks when you don't know what the regulatory climate will be 4 years from now? Certainly not 10 or 25 years from now.
It's kind of scary. It reminds me of a conversation I had one time with Dave Sear, our founder. I told him that I was just in awe of entrepreneurs because I just would never have the courage to start a business knowing all the regulatory compliance and things that are out there. And he said, well, Sarah, that's where you're wrong. We didn't know. I was ignorant. And so he said, but that's why you're here now, you know, to help us. But we're not trying to scare you, but it's panels like these and information like today that I hope makes you better equipped to run your businesses, and the chamber and all the resources that they make available to us, I think make us all sharper and better able to adapt as those swings happen. I've definitely drafted policies, maybe with your help, that with a change of administration immediately go out the window. So it can be very frustrating to keep up with. I do want to jump to the way this question is phrased and the way we wrote it is a little confusing, but I think I get it now. With increasing megawatt energy demands and significant infrastructure investments expected, how can small businesses adapt to both challenges and opportunities tied to these trends? And I think what we're asking here is, and this might be a little off the record maybe, but I think now that Bryan County's site has been taken by Hyundai, the next largest mega site in Georgia is in neighboring Peach County. And so the potential impacts to small businesses in our community as a site like that could potentially be developed. What does that do to a community? What does it look like? And before you answer, I do want to acknowledge that our very favorite electric co-op, Flint Energies, is in the room. Georgia Power got a shout out earlier, but Flint is here. And so thank you for all you do for our community. But Cosby, tell us about, some of those unintended consequences of these development projects, workforce, housing, and strains that can bring to a community.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. The one thing that I would say about small businesses is this isn't just a plug for the chamber, but get involved with your local chamber. And as those local larger projects come to your area, sit down with your locally elected officials, your business community, and really sketch out kind of what the community needs are very early. I think Bryan County was happy to land it. Anybody would be happy to land it. They were not thinking about the thousands of Koreans that would be moving into their community. That's just a simple thing, good or bad. They weren't, and so, you know, when I was talking to a legislator, a locally elected legislator from there, he was like, you would not believe how many times our cops pull people over driving on the wrong side of the road. Like, there was no work done in the transition. So I think for us, we need to figure out how many things do you need, and that equals infrastructure, roads, that equals schools, but it definitely also equals power. A lot of what we've seen from data centers, they've come into communities, and it's great to have them there, but they are an energy drain. Sometimes they can be a water drain, and they can be a resource drain. So those things are great to have in your community if your community is prepared and if your community is having the broad conversations together with state leadership.
Do you want to add anything from an economic perspective?
I just say, Bibb County is doing so well with this that we're running out of land, just so you know.
That's a good problem. What about our slides? Remember Houston County's number one?
Okay, and, you know, Cosby, you showed us the slides that showed that Georgia set to add over 3 million new jobs by 2050 across industries like healthcare, tech, and advanced manufacturing. What steps should small businesses take today to attract and retain talent for those emerging fields?
Man, this is one that I'm not an expert on how to do. Yeah. But I will say, you know, I think the earlier you get involved, the better for us. Down locally in our region, we're trying to tap in and become an aviation hub. We have Gulfstream down there, Lockheed Martin. We have others who are pending their growth. And so for us, we've reached out to the Savannah market. We're trying to get connected with our TCSU institution and build out the ability for them to come out with a credential and step right into aviation jobs. So if you regionalize where your jobs are, what your region is good at, get with those institutions and say, let's build that very transparent pipelines for those kids to quickly get into those jobs.
I have 3 that are in that alpha gen, I guess,
There you
that
go.
you put up there. So we'll see what kind of tech job they end up with. They do have plenty of social skills, though. That's they're ahead of the curve.
Influencers.
Well, maybe not. So I do want to hit too. We talked a lot. I think one of the surprising things for me that has been a takeaway is just the amount of time we spent talking about the labor shortage. And I was curious if earlier, maybe within the last 5 years, I heard a lot about the lack of labor participation. Has participation improved, or are there still fewer people participating that are of working age?
Yeah, so the labor force participation rate took a big dive during COVID. It only slightly recovered. We changed a lot of ways, and part of that was because baby boomers are retiring, so we're just having these demographic shifts that are working against us in that respect. But it is still low, and there's no real means other than bringing people in, either from other states or from other countries into the area. So immigration reform is something that's just going to have to be a deal for us going forward, because we can't not have people coming in. We just have to have the right workforce coming in to meet the jobs that we're going to have here in Georgia through 2050.
I'm going to toss this softball at you. What do you think about AI and helping businesses overcome some of the labor shortages that they have?
Yeah, AI and robotics, we'll see how that plays out. It is a potential labor-saving technology that as we go forward. Most of these things do change the way we do work. It doesn't. There's this idea that AI is going to take all of our jobs, and to believe in that idea requires that you think that there's a finite number of jobs in the first place, and there's not. There's an infinite number of jobs. So if replacing jobs with machinery and exporting or importing things from other countries, if that had done all the things that the hand-wringers have been saying over the past 100 years, we would have no more jobs. But right now we have 3.3% unemployment rate here in Houston County. We've lost 99.9% of the jobs, but we keep finding new ones to do. So that's the key, is not to kind of get into the hype about, again, Terminator taking all of our jobs and crushing the economy. It does change the face of jobs. It does require a higher skill set from our workers. We need to be work ready. We need to enhance that through the school system, and we're taking efforts at Middle Georgia State University to bring in AI degrees within all of our, just as a sub-discipline within all of our disciplines. It's going to impact every single job.
And let me, I guess, clear up another misconception, which is, while certainly money helps with attracting talent, I can tell you this much, that ultimately it's not really all about the economics of the situation. I mean, let's see a show of hands. How many of y'all know somebody who's left a higher paying job for a lower paying job for quality of life? I did. Keep your hand up if it was you. See, as we're competing for limited resources, so many business owners default to it's all about dollars. And it's not all about dollars, it's all about engagement, it's all about treatment. I've never had a union organizing campaign where it wasn't a who's the problem, not a what's the problem. And so ultimately, as we're competing for these limited resources, we really need to take a look at the culture that you have within your organization, because money will help attract some folks, but it won't keep folks. Culture keeps folks, not dollars.
With that. Yeah. Now I'd like to end the panel with a lightning round. So we'll just go one by one, and any final thoughts or things that you wanted to touch on that you didn't get the opportunity to today. Let's start with you, Jonathan.
No, otherwise, I said a few minutes ago, right, which is, as we're looking at the economics, we really have to look at how we're structuring our businesses, how we engage folks, because that really is the key to keeping talent. And so I encourage you to start leadership development at the first line supervisor level, because it is all about, my stock in trade is poor leadership and poor communication, and usually a combination of both. Organizations that have strong leadership and strong communication generally don't have a whole lot of employment litigation.
I would say really quickly, just know whatever issue you are having as a business, you're not alone. There's businesses across the 159 counties that are having that same issue. So if you have an issue, don't stay quiet about it. Get in touch with us, get in touch with myself, get in touch with James, get in touch with whomever, and let's talk about that issue, because I promise you, 99.9% of the time, there are other people having that same issue, and we want to get you guys together in the room together.
I gotta say that I was glad to see no lawyers were on the high demand career list. I was glad to see lawyer was not on there. I've been thinking about that since you showed that slide. I was thinking, thank God. But I focus on tort reform. I think that it will have a lasting and positive impact for the business atmosphere here in Georgia. I think that moving forward, there's still opportunity to improve things, and my organization and the chamber, we work hand in hand in a lot of ways, and I think we'll be talking about that a little bit more moving forward. But look, I think that y'all are very well represented in the Georgia legislature. That's what I've come to find, and a few of you I've met over the years, having worked in the Senate for so long. And anyway, I just think that this is a great opportunity to share what the work is going on in Atlanta, but also how it impacts you guys, and just appreciate y'all's willingness to listen to us jabber up here for however long. So, thank you.
I'd just like to finish by saying I chose my words really carefully when I mentioned that we had a sibling rivalry with Houston County, and because ultimately we are a regional family, and despite that rivalry, I've come to learn this as an economist, but I think that a lot of people in Bibb and Houston County still don't seem to understand this very well. Is that when Houston County wins, Bibb County wins, and when Bibb County wins, Houston County wins. And when I heard we have a mega site in Peach County, if they got a huge, BMW plant like Greenville did there or something, if that happened, that would not hurt Houston and Bibb County. It would benefit us greatly in Peach County. So we need to start thinking regionally about these things, and as much as I joke about it, the idea of sibling rivalry is only that deep. Other than that, we need to think of ourselves as a regional family and support each other going forward, because it's just a win-win for all of us.
Very well said. Thank you.
Join me once again in thanking our panel, and thank you, Sarah, for moderating. And I want to give a special shout out. I think she might have slipped out to Diana Hannah Davis with Phillips Furniture, providing our great conversation corner. Today, it's a wonderful opportunity to highlight and showcase local businesses. And I know Cosby is one that mentioned engagement, and I know you guys we're about to hit 1:30 and ready to get out here, but it is so important whether you can come in person or engage with us online. We've got a number of our Boss Food Pros in the back where we have found sectors of our membership to get together who have similar challenges and similar problems. Our role as a convener of leaders and influencers is to connect you with each other. It is to connect you with resources like those represented on the stage, and know that any problem that you're having, we're just a phone call away from these guys. I do want to also let you know on your tables, the QR code there will take you to the slides that were presented today. We'll also link the Georgia Chamber Red Book. We've got all of their profiles, so your LinkedIn pages or your websites will all be linked as well. So if you want to get in touch with any of our presenters today, you can do that. I want to once again thank Parish Construction Group for sponsoring this entire series, and then of course Planners First Bank for sponsoring today's session. And they've got a great giveaway for you guys on the table. If you'll drop your name tag on the way out and grab that, please take time to have some conversation. And then our next time back in here, believe it or not, will be for our housing outlook in July. And we've got some exciting things on the horizon there. So y'all be well, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.